Mā te whakarongo, mā te kōrero, mā te nākau, mā te wārua, mā te manaaki mai, mā te manaaki atu, ka puawai, te manamatanga, tihei o. Through listening, through talking, from the heart, from the spirit, through giving and receiving respect, understanding will bloom. This is the essence of life. So welcome along to our council meeting on the 4th of October. The standard health and safety update, the toilets are just outside chambers on your right. Evacuation, please exit down the stairwell from the assembly point on Bay Street. Don't use the lift. Earthquake, drop, cover and hold. Please make sure our phones are on silent. And these proceedings are being recorded for the purpose of live video, live streaming and downloading. So by remaining in this meeting, you're consenting to being filmed for viewing by the public. Okay, so apologies. We've got an apology for lateness from Councillor Ruddenclaw and an apology from Councillor Byers. Are there any further apologies? To move those. Thank you, Councillor Lee. Councillor Keast. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Anyone against? It's carried. Do we have any requests for absence? I'll move to the conflict of interest. I'll be declaring a conflict of interest myself in the trading in public places bylaw section. Do we have anyone else? Councillor Graham?
I will declare it, although we don't, our cafe does operate off its private land. I think there's probably a conflict potentially perceived.
No further conflict of interest? Do we need to move that? We do, don't we?
No.
Cool. Don't think we've got any extraordinary or urgent items. So that moves us to the confirmation of the minutes from our meeting held on the 20th of September on page 6. Is there someone in a position to move those? Thank you, Councillor O'Brien. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Anyone against? That is carried. So we have no public participation today, but we do have a hearing for the smoke-free and open space policy. That's 7.1. But they haven't turned up yet. Oh, maybe. We'll move to 7.2. So this is the Easter Sunday shop trading policy submissions and hearing. It's on page 61 of your agenda. We've got Darrell in New Zealand online. Can you hear us?
I can. It's cracking up a little bit. Can you hear me?
We can. Yep. Thanks, Darrell. So we'll give you 10 minutes to have your say, and yeah, the floor is yours.
Awesome. I don't think I'll need 10 minutes. I'll keep it succinct for you all. Little bit of background about Hospitality New Zealand. We're a member-led non-for-profit organisation representing approximately 3,000 businesses, including cafes, restaurants, bars, nightclubs, commercial accommodation, country hotels and off licences around the country. We've got a 121-year history on advocating on behalf of the hospitality and tourism sector. We have a new Chief Executive, Steve Armitage, and a team of 7 regional managers located around the country with a national office in Wellington to service our members. We have 18 local branches covering the entire country, representing at a local level all those member businesses which are located within the region. I have submitted on behalf of the Southland branch of Hospitality New Zealand. So Hospitality New Zealand welcomes the opportunity to comment on this policy. We appreciate Southland District Council's approach to allow shops to open on Easter Sunday if they would like to. Hospitality New Zealand agrees that shops should be able to trade on Easter Sunday as it is a big boost for the economy. Hospitality New Zealand also appreciates Southland District Council's consideration of the needs of the retail and tourism, including hospitality sectors. Southland is a visitor destination for long weekends and would miss out on a lot of potential custom if shops were to go back to closing. Hospitality New Zealand believes people should have a choice if they would like to open their business, go to the shops or visit hospitality venues for the day. Hospitality New Zealand also agrees that this policy contributes to consistency for business operators and would like to see a consistent approach across all councils of New Zealand. Thank you very much. That's us done.
Thanks, Darrell. It was nice and quick. Do we have any questions from the floor for Darrell? Looks like you're up the hook there, but thank you very much for taking the time to submit. Much appreciated.
You're very welcome. Thanks, everybody.
Cheers. Thank you.
See ya.
See you later. Okay, so we've got the recommendation there on page 62 that we receive the report titled Easter Sunday Shop Trading Policy, Submissions and Hearing. And we receive all the written submissions and hear the submitter who wishes to be the draft. Sorry.
Thank the submitter for their submission.
So we'll thank the submitter, sorry. On T. Someone in a position to move A through to D? Councillor Bacroy, Councillor Chamberlain. There's no further discussion on that. I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone against? It is carried. Thank you. And we'll go back to the future on 7.1, which is on page 23 of your agenda. And so this is to do with the smoke vape-free open spaces policy. Speaker may have voted aye. Good morning, welcome along.
Thank you.
So we'll give you 10 minutes to do your submission.
Thank you. Kia ora koutou katoa, ko Taringatura Tupuki, ko Jacobs Te Wahapu, ko Grimwood Toku Whānau, no Aparima Aho. Ke te mahi aho, mō te whatu ora, ko Joe Grimwood Toku Ingoa, nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Kia ora, everyone. My name is Joe Grimwood. I'm a mother of three. I'm a born and bred Southlander. I now live in Riverton. I work for the National Public Health Service. However, today I'm actually here representing the Smoke-Free Mirahiku Coalition. So members of that coalition are Ngāketi Mautaramu Pounamu Charitable Trust, and this includes the Korari Māori Public Health Unit, the Southern Stop Smoking Service, Well South, Healthy Families in Vikago, Awarua Whānau Services, the Cancer Society, and of course Te Whatu Ora, National Public Health Service. As members of the Smoke-Free Mirahiku Coalition, we acknowledge and support the mahi that the Southland District Council have carried out leading up to this draft Smoke-Free Open Spaces policy. This shows that the Council is progressive and prepared to take positive action towards the smoke-free goal of 2025. Smoke-Free Aotearoa 2025 is not about a ban on smoking, rather it's a commitment to reducing smoking to very low levels, meaning that less than 5% of our population will be smoking by 2025. We support the Smoke-Free Open Spaces policy and the introduction of clear and simple signage alongside ongoing communications to members of the public. These aspects are very important as the policy is used as a tool to inform, educate and advise the public of expectations while they spend time in outdoor settings across the Southland District. We are also supportive of the inclusion of vaping into the policy. We know numbers of daily vapers are on the increase, so including vaping in this policy is a great step forward, and we commend you on that. Providing smoke-free and vape-free areas is a vitally important way of denormalising smoking and vaping, and it promotes healthy lifestyles. Increasing the number of public outdoor spaces in which smoking and vaping is discouraged reduces the visibility of these behaviours. This is about providing smoke-free and vape-free role modelling and protecting the young. We know that around 5,000 people die every year in New Zealand because of smoking or second-hand smoke exposure, and that equates sadly to around 13 people a day. There is no safe level of second-hand smoke exposure. The risks to public health from second-hand smoke has been well documented, and exposure to second-hand smoke has been linked to a number of health consequences such as lung cancer, coronary heart disease, sudden infant death syndrome and stroke. Children who are exposed to secondhand smoke experience more hospital admissions than children who are not. So what do we know about Southland District and smoking tobacco? So we're still taking the numbers from the 2018 census, which is obviously 5 years ago because the data isn't going to be available until next year. But based on those numbers, the prevalence of regular smoking in New Zealand was for 13.2%. And at that time, the prevalence of smoking in the Southland District sat above that at 15.3%. However, the annual New Zealand Health Survey, and we take that data from the 2022 survey, indicates that those numbers have likely dropped. Where it sat with saying 8% of New Zealanders were daily smokers, and which means 92% of New Zealanders do not smoke. The most marked inequities in smoking are by social economic status, and in Southland, for example, Riverton and Ojai nightcaps sit at New Zealand deprivation levels 7 and 8, respectively, and both have some of the highest rates of smoking in the Southland District. They both sit well above the New Zealand average. So just to give you a bit of a snapshot there. So what do we know about vaping statistics? Well, we know it's on the increase, and the New Zealand Health Survey also indicated that 8.3% of adults were vaping daily. It is important to improve the health and well-being of our priority populations, and creating smoke-free and vape-free open spaces supports this kaupapa. We recommend strengthening the events section to ensure that all events on Southland District land are always promoted as smoke-free and vape-free events. Providing smoke-free and vape-free community events are highly supportive for people trying to become smoke-free or vape-free and to avoid relapse. Because nicotine is so highly addictive, the sight and smell of others smoking or vaping, accompanied by the easy access to cigarettes and vapes, shared or encouraged by others, makes it very hard to resist. This is not about punishing people who smoke or vape, rather supporting those on the cessation journey. Smoke-free and vape-free events provide good role modelling for tamariki and rangatahi. Not seeing people smoking or vaping informs them that being smoke-free or vape-free is actually a normal way of life, and it encourages them to never start. The National Public Health Service, that's myself, we have a smoke-free events toolkit available, and it provides guidance around smoke-free messaging, and also we have resources which can be free of charge that can be used at any smoke-free event. So we can work on that down the track potentially with you. Southland District could share and promote this smoke-free events toolkit to the public via their website and Facebook page. The public can see their options and then contact us directly, and we'd work directly with them. We also recommend strengthening the lease section to ensure that all parties who lease Southland District Council-owned sports grounds are always provided with a copy of the smoke-free, vape-free open spaces policy. And it's specified that smoking and vaping are not permitted at any time. Measures such as this go a long way to help denormalise smoking and vaping for our children and young people, and promotes healthy choices around sport-related activities in our communities. We support signage to be implemented outside of council buildings, including libraries, community halls, community centres and museums. These buildings are for our people to access and use, and should always promote healthy lifestyles and be whānau friendly. It seems that allowing smoking or vaping to take place right outside a council building is counterintuitive to promoting smoke-free, vape-free lifestyles for all local residents. Research shows us there is much public support for smoke-free environments, even from people who smoke. In summary, the smoke-free and vape-free policy is not a statement about or a judgment upon people who smoke or vape, and it doesn't infringe upon their rights. A policy doesn't tell people not to smoke or vape, only where not to smoke or vape. Experience tells us that people who smoke are generally very considerate and will smoke outside of designated smoke-free areas as long as they are suitably informed. Evidence indicates that smoke-free outdoor policies can reduce the uptake of smoking and increase quit rates. Policing enforcement is not a requirement when introducing a policy. Rather, ensuring a mass communication strategy is in place to inform the public and ensure they are aware of the changes. We all know that collaboration and partnership goes a long way, and on behalf of the Smoke-Free Mirahiku Coalition, we look forward to continuing to work alongside the Southland District Council while we all look to promote the social, economic, environmental and cultural wellbeing of our communities. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much, Jo, for a very well informed and good presentation. Do we have any questions from the floor? Being none, I'll thank you very much for
Easy. Thank you.
thank you for taking the time.
Could I just make a comment? Sorry.
Certainly can, Councillor.
While we have to be seen to be objective on every level. I have my feelings and thoughts about vaping and smoking in general, and it's not a new thing under the sun to understand that smoking is not good for us and so on and so forth. I think one of the challenges, and as I say, it's just a general comment, is that whenever I've come to Invercargill or Winton, I've noticed that the vape shops in particular are very well presented and smart. They're inviting. They have an air of sophistication. They're pretty well presented places. And I just wonder whether or not, in terms of your presentation and you're saying, well, how can SDC contribute in terms of the messaging outside of council buildings and so on? And I know this is something that we can't enforce, but, people who sell cigarettes, in terms of their advertising on the packaging, they have to show the visual circumstances of using cigarettes. Yep. And those visual messages, that visual messaging is quite powerful, as opposed to signage, literature, a lot of the time. And I just wonder whether or not, I just wonder what we can do in that space, and whether or not you've got tools in that area. We've got, later on today, we've got a meeting around signage in general. So maybe there's areas of our district where we could promote some form of signage, which is not directly with the shops, but in proximity to those shops. I don't know. Something to think about.
So in terms of signage, just on the smoke-free, because there isn't actually any available that have both the smoke-free and vape-free at all times, for example. Yeah. So we have actually developed our own and can support you if that's where you want to head in terms of providing the smoke-free, vape-free signage. But yeah, the vape space is an evolving space, and again, we're led by government decisions, and so yeah, I think that there's certainly a lot more work to go in that space down the future, because we're just seeing the numbers increasing. And especially with young people, and as you say, they're so slick. It's the tobacco companies that are behind all of this, so they're always 10 steps ahead of everyone else, and they're particularly marketing to the youth.
Yeah, it's a travesty, right? And while you say, we are government-led, I still think we have a responsibility at a local level, whether it be through the council or a community, to be able to put as much pressure as we can. And as you say, not in an enforcement way, not in a policing way, but in an educational way, to say, hey, guess what, it's a shame that in 10 or 20 years' time, we didn't have the foresight to be able to say, whether it's smoking or vaping, both things are incredibly detrimental to everybody on every level, whether it be from a health perspective, the social perspective, the cost to businesses, to families, and to the country as a whole. I really think that messaging needs to be directed in the right way, so that it is as effective as we possibly can. And it's great to hear that you've already got those tools and you can make those available to us.
Yes,
so well
exactly.
done.
Well, yeah, and I commend the council on hopefully taking that step to include the vaping aspect into the policy, because you've got to start somewhere, and it's a matter of switching the mindset of people that are vaping and smoking. I know smoking has already been, and smoke-free spaces have been around for some time now, but it is a new area to contend with in terms of changing that mentality around vaping and where people are vaping. So it will take time, but I think you've got to start somewhere, and it's going to create a shift in people's minds to be conscious of where they're vaping and think, actually, I'm not able to do that here, there's kids around, I need to remove myself, which is going along the same tracks as smoking did many, many years ago. But yeah, just keep lobbying, I guess, and advocate for more changes.
You've got Councillor Duffy.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm actually a former smoker, so I understand a bit about the addiction side of things. It is concerning to see the way that we seem to have let the cat get out of the bag with the vaping, with young people particularly. I can't understand why vape products have a nicotine content, and I'm wondering if that, with our making places smoke-free is great, but it still happens, and there's really no policing to stop it when it does at various fixtures. But can we not advocate for nicotine to be removed from vape? Am I naive?
No, there are. So the reason vapes were brought into New Zealand in the first place was to support people to quit smoking.
Yeah.
So they needed to have vapes that have that nicotine content, and there are varying levels of nicotine levels in the vapes, including 0%. There is coming a reduction of the nicotine that's going to be allowed in the products. So there's definitely changes that are coming, and potentially that means less addictive, but there's still a ways to go. Like the 0% aren't promoted at all.
Yes.
So there's a lot more work to be done in terms of the specialist vape retailers and the support that they can give people that are coming in that are wanting to quit, because they need to have a strategy to get off the vapes as well, and that's where that nicotine content is crucial. Yeah.
It's a great idea, but it's probably a bit like bringing lager in to get people off beer, like it's one other, replacing something with something else.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We didn't quite get off the hook with no questions, but
That's all.
thanks very much, Joe. Okay, so we've got our recommendations on page 24, and we've had a total of, I think, 9 submissions, 6 in support, 3 opposed, and submitted.
We'll just change it to thank the submitter.
Yeah, so we'll change D again to thank the submitter for submitting, and similar recommendations to last time, A through to D. Is there someone in a position? Councillor Graney, seconded by Councillor Fraser. If no further discussion, I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Anyone against? That's carried. Thank you.
7.3 is not happening, so
Right.
should we take 7.5?
Cool. So 7.3, due to Bex not being available, we're going to postpone that to a future meeting. And you suggesting we go to 7.5?
You do, Jane, and then we can come back to the news report after that, and then we'll do 7.5.
Okay, so we'll jump to, on the wise advice of my committee advisor sitting next to me, 7.5. This is on page 93, which is a draft dangerous, affected and unsanitary buildings policy, deliberations and adoption. Lots of policies today.
Indeed. Thank you. Good morning, Your Worship. Good morning, councillors. So this report is to present the draft dangerous, affected and unsanitary buildings policy for deliberation and adoption by council. So this policy is council's tool to manage buildings in the district that which could pose health or safety risks to the public, and the draft that is presented meets council's responsibilities in performing the functions that are required under the Building Act. The council was publicly consulted under the special consultative procedure, and during that time 2 submissions were received, neither of which have required hearings. Now, just to clarify, the one submitter who indicated they would like to be heard when contacted has decided not to speak today. So discussion of the points were raised in consultation, and some of the issues raised in engagement have been included in the report, which I'll take as read. So there have been no further changes made to the draft policy since it was consulted on. So today this report is looking to council to choose whether it proceeds and adopts the draft policy presented or proposes a different way forward. So thank you, and Ellie and I are here to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Williams. Have we got any questions? Looks like Councillor.
It's probably not around this policy, but I was just wondering whether we in the arsenal of council-owned buildings. I'm thinking of, say, the Lumsden Rec Ground, for example. Do we have any buildings that would almost fit within the context of this policy?
You can answer now.
Well,
I think that's probably
probably more of a Mark question. Yeah, just curious.
Well, if there's no further questions, we've got our recommendations there on page 94. So we're so we're considering the feedback received on the draft affected building policy, and are we going to resolve to adopt the policy or propose a different way forward? Going by there's no questions, I'm going to make an assumption that we're looking at adopting the policy. And everyone's nodding, so we'll cross out E2, and is there someone in a position to move A through to E with Councillor O'Brien and Councillor Spraggan? Any further discussion on that? None, I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Anybody against? It is carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Sally.
We're still here for
Still
the
me.
draft trading and public places bylaw consultation, and I will vacate the chair and hand over the deputy mayor.
Thank you. So this report seeks council's endorsement to go up for consultation on the draft trading and public places bylaw and associated statement of proposal, both of which are included with the report. So the draft bylaw has consolidated rules from the two bylaws and the one policy that are currently under review. And this allows council to continue to regulate and manage trading activities, including mobile trading, alfresco dining, signage and retail displays in public places which are owned or controlled by council. So in developing the draft, we've tried to future-proof it by structuring it in a way that any potential activities that may arise in the future are able to be added to the bylaw by resolution and without opening up the entire bylaw for review. So one of those significant issues were highlighted in pre-engagement. One area that has changed is the removal of the provision to remit fees for alfresco dining. So instead, the draft proposes a consistent user pays approach, which shifts any risk or cost back to the applicant and not to the general ratepayer. So finally, while staff have considered how best we can address some of the pre-engagement feedback that's related to operational conditions and to approved trading sites, the draft is proposed to continue as it is at the moment, and that's as operating as a high-level tool to regulate and enforce where needed. So there's a separate review taking place currently by the Environmental Health Team, which is looking at the operational conditions and that schedule of approved sites. Any feedback that's been received to date and anything that comes through consultation will be directed into that separate review. Okay, so if council endorses the draft and statement of proposal today, we'll be looking to go out for consultation under the special consultative procedure from between the 12th of October and 13th of November. And it's intended that any submissions received are presented back to council along with any hearings required when it meets on the 22nd of November. So thank you, and Becky and I are here to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? Councillor Fraser?
I'm just curious about the operational conditions and how that's a separate process. My gut feel from the people I've heard is that they're probably going to submit to this on that. And so is there any thought of how we tell that story, that there's a separate and that's coming, or when and how?
Thank you, through you. Thank you, that's a great question. I think it's there are many ways in which to proceed with this, and I can see in other councils they have pulled conditions within their bylaw. The reason we've tried to keep it separate, it gives us the ability to change them as needed. They're a live document, they're flexible, they can change with what is required, and that's how we've operated to date. Using the bylaw as the enforcement tool and having those conditions sitting outside. Now, I'm aware there's a lot of interest in the conditions, and that is why that review is underway now, to make sure that what we put in place works for both the community and works internally in terms of administering it too. So the statement of proposal has tried to address that. We've put a distinct section in there saying we're happy to capture those views, and certainly they'll feed into the review that's underway right now.
Thank you. Did I answer your question? Thank you. Any other questions? That's the case.
Thank you.
on page 121, reasonably consistent with but not the same as the draft of the bylaws adopted by neighbouring councils. What's the variation there?
Through you, obviously each region has different requirements. ICC, for example, only has one area that they've set aside for mobile trading. We have many diverse areas. Gore is the same. They have one area that they actually have mobile traders trading. So we, in terms of our neighbouring councils, we have very different requirements, hence our bylaw sits slightly differently to that. But to be honest, I think in terms of the general conditions that we're outlining, we mirror them.
So in terms of our bylaw, will the areas that are approved, they will be part of the bylaw, or are they part of the conditions?
The areas that are approved will sit outside the bylaw within that separate document. I think one area that we could see differences was in that ability to remit fees or not, and that was one of the reasons we chose to remove that condition from the bylaw. That in Riversdale, for example, you've got Gore District Council with one set of rules, neighbouring, you've got Tiana with potentially another set of conditions that might, so we're trying to provide that consistency throughout the district, which then matches what's being applied in Gore and in ICC, a consistent approach.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Right, now's the position to put the motion. If we've got someone who's able to move that, please. All those in favour or in agreement? Any against? Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move ahead to, thank you for that, Deputy Mayor. Members. Move ahead to item 7.7 with the draft speed management plan consultation. Close enough to policy?
Yeah, well, yeah.
We're on page 167.
Pretty close. Thank you and good morning, Your Worship and Councillors. The purpose of this report is to present the draft 2024 to 2027 Speed Management Plan for endorsement by Council for public consultation. Speed management plans are new instruments required to be developed by councils on a 3-yearly cycle to set out how speed is managed and safer speeds are achieved within their areas. These plans are required to be prepared based on requirements set by the Director of Land Transport and guidance from Waka Kotahi. In preparing Council's draft plan, staff have factored in responses to preliminary engagement provided by stakeholders within the community in Te Ara Marama, along with feedback provided by councillors at their workshop back on 6th of September. Transitioning roads to safer speeds is a long-term approach requiring implementation in stages over many years, with initial focus required on areas of high risk. Council's initial plan, therefore, is proposed to primarily focus on making mandatory reductions to speeds around schools and to roads with current 70 km/h speed limits which are outside of safe and appropriate speeds, along with reductions to speeds in other areas sought within the community, outside Takutai o Tititi Marae and Colac Bay, and on boundary roads with other councils. Staff recognise that further conversation and consultation is required with the community in relation to how safer speeds can be approached more widely for other urban areas and rural roads within the district, and this is planned over the next 3 years to help inform future speed management plans. If Council endorses the draft plan for consultation, staff want to take a consultation process in accordance with Section 82 of the Local Government Act from 12 October to 10 November. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Chris. Just a couple of questions from me to start. With the variable speed limits, and are those basically needing to have those expensive signs that change, or are there alternative ways of doing the variable speed limits?
So it's actually a combination. There'll be a combination of both static signs and variable signs. So people have seen around Invercargill as an example, the more minor roads or adjacent roads tend to have the static signs with the time frames that the speed limit applies, and then on the busier roads, particularly where the actual school entrance is situated on, has the electronic signs. They tend to be the electronic signs because they're not active and you don't have the 30, as an example, up all the time. They tend to be a bit more effective as well when they're actually activated and on. So they do tend to have a higher degree of compliance from the static signs, where often people just become complacent around seeing the same sign all the time. So there's guidance around whether, depending on the road, the traffic volume, whether you should consider static signs or signs and come on electronic signs.
Just sort of conscious of the cost implications of potentially agreeing to this down the track. There might actually be some significant expense for us. And my other question, just before I hand over to councillors, just using like Gaston as an example, and I see you've noted it there, but because it's not in our remit, but like knowing that community has been wanting for quite a long time to reduce the speed limit of the town, which is just south of the school. Is there any opportunity to, I guess, inform Waka Kotahi to, at the same time as this, to look at those things, or is that totally separate to this?
No, it's definitely an opportunity, and they have actually been out and about. I'm not 100% sure of that one, but as an example, I know they've looked at Edendale, and that's definitely on the plan. I think they're in a very similar position to us around the schools and to reduce the speed around those schools. Can happily check up on the Gaston one in particular, but I think they have actually been out to some of our areas of our district and got in touch with some of the boards as well.
Thinking there, like it wouldn't make sense to reduce the speed in front of the school and increase the speed in front of the township. A longer one. So I've got Councillor Vaporai and then Councillor Bracken.
Morning, gentlemen. Looking at clause number 19 on page 169, that says greater than 90% of roads within New Zealand are above the safe and appropriate limit determined by Waka Kotahi. So do we presume that we are also in the same boat? More than 90% of our roads are ultimately changed? Is that what we have? Is that new for Southland as well?
From a long-term point of view, and the tool that gets used, most of the sealed roads, as an example, our network deem a safe and appropriate speed to be closer to 80 kilometres an hour, and then unsealed roads would probably be around the 60 kilometre an hour mark. But that's to be fair, quite a generalisation. But it's recognising that on your higher speed roads, there's generally no safety barriers or no delineation between the traffic, and that's one of the factors that drives down, I suppose, safe and appropriate speed. Where your motorways, as an example, you're separating your oncoming traffic from the opposing traffic, and those are sort of factors that make the road more appropriate for higher speeds. So those sort of
have a comment on that one, but that's a personal opinion here. I've found that times the barrier in between probably gives you less flexibility. If someone else is, doing something stupid, you are there. You don't have a way out. But then another question I have to follow up is I've been looking at Tasman District Council, and they seem to be taking a piecemeal approach based on the community, what they are saying, to reduction of speeds around schools. So some schools are going for a permanent speed reduction, and for the others, there's a time-limited one. So what are our plans here, and how do we propose to go about this one?
So our approach for now is to take a time-limited around the schools, and then have a conversation around what the future may look like beyond the schools, in essence. So that could be ultimately that a whole, call it suburb or a region of a town, becomes a slower speed, but we need to have that conversation with our community, and that's what our plan proposes from a 10-year point of view. Is actually having that longer-term view of what those communities might look like. What might be right for Winton may not be right for Edendale or Foxford. So
do we have any, on that note, do we have any areas or any schools which have been marked by Waka Kotahi as you will need to, put in something here? Because it seems in Able Tasman, some of those places, NZTA has taken away that flexibility. It's like we have already been with the school, and this median is going in here, and this is going to. Do we have anything like that already? Have we been handed down something that this is changing?
if I've understood the question, that's around where there's state highways and
Yeah.
the reduction. Yeah, I know Edendale is definitely changing.
Okay.
I'd have to have a look, unless this is aware off the top of my head, I'd have to check with the NZTA around the other schools.
Thank
As
you.
mentioned earlier, they definitely take focusing on schools as a first call.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
Councillor Spring?
Yeah, just a comment that at this stage, as far as the island's concerned, we would be actually interested in extending that 30 into a larger area than what you're showing on the map. Because the roads aren't suitable for faster than 30. And the cost of signage and things is what we were also considering, that by just shifting some of these areas, you include other streets, and you don't have to put up multiple signs. So virtually the whole of the Half Moon Bay area, we're interested in reducing to 30. And they are, without footpaths and things, they are high pedestrian on the road and safety factors.
So is that a change you'd like to make for the draft consultation?
I think so, yeah. No, we'd be actually interested in doing it, because it seems silly to have to put signs up and then in a couple of years down the line have to change them all.
So is there a change you would like to make to the consultation draft or post-consultation?
As long as it goes, it's considered at this stage.
Is that something that is easily done, making an amendment like that to this document? What would your advice be around that?
If we made that amendment, we'd have to bring back the draft plan to a future meeting. So in terms of timelines, we're already pushing the consultation dates with Waka Kotahi already, so that would push ourselves back further in those dates.
Does it then go out for submissions, or
It's going
so we could, at the submission stage, the community board could?
Correct.
Good submit.
In fact, the feedback is exactly what we'd hoped through the consultation process. That
Your initial part is good, but in looking at it, we can sort of see, well, that is right on a road intersection. So where does the signage go? On which road? But we could put a submission in.
Yeah, I think noting that this is going to be draft out for consultation, there's ability to change it from that feedback.
Absolutely.
That should be fine. Councillor Keast.
Good morning. Does the speed management plan replace the bylaw?
Through your worship, yes, it does. It will. So the new speed limits rule is basically established the new national speeds limits register. So our speed limits were transferred to that last year, wasn't it? Yep. And so that is the new centralised repository for speed limits, and new speed limits or speed limit changes are now implemented through the speed management plan. So the bylaw in short course will be revoked as it's no longer required. So that'll be at a forthcoming council meeting.
So in terms of who can then change the speed limits that are there, will that still be through a consultative process, or are we losing our autonomy here to actually make these decisions?
Through your worship, that would still be through a consultative process.
So it couldn't be by directive from Kotahi?
No.
Councillor Duffy, Councillor Chamberlain, Councillor Menzies.
Thank you. So the various variation, or whatever they're called, speed limits, the variable speed limits, they are only on school days at the start and end of the school day. Is that correct? And it's not very well defined, I don't think.
So, to your worship, yeah, so there's two elements that we discussed. One is, correction on my statement earlier, is that got variable speed limits, and then you've got your more permanent, and to Councillor Spraggins' point earlier around some areas, we're going to having permanent speed limit reductions, or because from a location point of view, where the school's located, is it a no exit road, those sorts of elements that are coming to it. So, and then how busy they are they only a low volume road? Were you busier, more through roads, or the ones where you look at more variable speed limits, and would be only for the pickup drop-off times generally? So you'd have, if the school Time's 9 o'clock, it might be an 8:30 till 9:15.
I was probably thinking of more of the days the schools aren't open.
Yeah, no, for the variables, they won't be. There won't be a 30 kilometre at 8 o'clock in the morning, or 9 o'clock in the morning, or over the weekends, as an example.
Yeah, only on school days.
Good. And the suggested change of speed limit in like Edendale on Ferry Road from 70k to 60k, is that come out for consultation too?
Yeah, we have to review the 70k. So generally the options for the 70k are either going up to an 80 or reduction to 60.
And then there's the boundary roads such as the Waimatua, Kennington one, and so on. So that's recommended going from 100 to 80. I know that there's quite a bit of angst out in our area about the speed limit on the Waimatua to Tisbury section of it. So people have a chance to have input into that as well, or is that sort of mandatory?
I suppose the challenge is we've got the boundary roads where one RCA, in this case Invercargill, has already changed effectively half the road. So if you're travelling in one direction, you could go 80, but then on the STC legal side of the road, it's 100. So there's inconsistency around messaging, I suppose, when you're travelling in theory down the same piece of road. And so it's trying to tidy up some of those really. So it is a tricky scenario, because if we changed ours or left ours at 100, but yeah, the other half of the road's 80. Well, I suppose the proposal is to, there's been consultation on that through Invercargill City Council already, and trying to tidy some of those aspects up. Ultimately what we're proposing. Short answer, don't really know if there's a magical solution to it.
I think the attempt is to bring as much common sense to sorting some of the stuff out, some of these anomalies out as you can, taking account of the engineering issues and the safety issues. So,
yeah, well, a straight sealed road like that one, I don't know that 80 is necessary.
It's an interesting phenomenon where you've got a shared road and separate consultation. Yeah, the intricacies of what we're working. Councillor Chambers?
Probably a silly question because I probably already know the answer, but who's paying? And if the answer is what I think it is, how are we going to go about funding it?
So it's a shared funding. So Wakataing ourselves at the current funding assistance rate, and from a funding point of view, it's in our current budget. So it's already allowed for.
Driven from above, so would they? Do they obviously don't fund the whole thing?
No, they don't, and they haven't in the past. To be fair, as part of this long-term plan period, the previous council requested that schools, or that was the focus point, was schools, and we budgeted accordingly to allow for funding of infrastructure and reduction of speeds around school.
Is there additional safety funding from Wakataing that's separate to the normal funding lines, or does that apply in this case?
So from a actual funding assistance rate, not for this, but from a, I suppose, overall budget point of view, it does come out of a separate funding stream.
So it doesn't mean we're competing with other sort of...
It's not competing with our standard operations and maintenance funding stream, so it comes out of a separate funding stream or bucket, the way you'd like to.
Can we make more noise? Can we apply for, just accepting the decision from above and going with it? Can we sort of put up a bit more of a fight? Can we demand more funding to do this?
I was going to say through you, demanding probably not.
Yeah.
And I think the issue, and I think you've reflected it well, Harley, is if it seemed that this council had a desire to change things anyway, regardless of this law coming in. There was concern around safety around schools that got built in through the LTP. So there's definitely a shared, I'm not sure it's, the question is it being imposed on us and we've got to go and do these terrible things, or is it something that council wants to embrace and make sure it's
I'm not questioning the policy. I think it's a good idea, but I just said, well, let's challenge the funding of it. Let's try and, is my question.
Because this is
if I may interrupt, this is all part of the Road to Zero, right? And there was more than $2 billion, they said, that is going to go towards policy development, safety, and all of this. Did we get any bit of this? Any bit of that Road to Zero funding? Did that come down to councils?
So, I suppose the challenge is when often the funds are spoken about that there might be $2 million available or 20 million or whatever the number is. Because of the standard funding policy, a lot of the time, don't get me wrong, there are exceptions, federal funding, those sorts of scenarios, but a lot of the time with the funding, the transportation activity, it's at your standard funding assistance rate. So yes, there might be $20 million or
2.6 billion actually.
Yeah.
They said was allocated to Road to Zero, but we haven't seen anything of that. Specifically earmarked for.
So we have seen some of that. So some of the intersection improvements that we've carried out, as an example, during this 3-year funding period, we have some of that has come from the Road to Zero funding category, but it's been at our standard funding assistance rate.
Nothing, no extras there.
So we're not getting from the funding pool that's been set aside for Road to Zero. It's not 100% funded. Council still has to come. If you want access to the money, you still need to come to the party with, in our case, 48.
Instead of that separate budget, so it's not competing with that. So if we're changing an intersection for safety reasons, it's not coming out of our BAU stuff. So we still have to.
But we still have to come up with our share of it to access that funding. Yeah.
Councillor Menzies.
Thank you for this paper, and as it's just been said, as the council last triennium were interested, more than interested, in undertaking action around slow the speed around schools across our area. So it's great to see that happening. I also was interested in just the information you had there, just identifying what is the current speed, average speed at the moment, and I think that will be helpful for our communities to see as well. I was just wondering if, when looking at this, and obviously there's quite a cost around the signage, but that's what we've got to do, were there any signals that there may need to be infrastructure changes around the schools only? Because I realise there may be changes required for other elements of this, but around the schools, was there any indications of that being necessary?
So through your worship, so we did have a look at that when we originally started looking at the speeds around schools. Part of what we were looking at was when the original draft legislation came out, you had to carry out infrastructure changes at the same time as speed limits to help ensure that the road environment matched the speed limit. But what subsequently happened was that they said, no, you can actually implement the speed limits before the infrastructure changes, see how effective the actual speed limit changes are, and then follow that up with infrastructure changes. We have started looking at some of the roads around the schools that we think we may have to intervene, and we're building that into our current long-term plan. I don't have a list of the sites with me, but we are looking at that as to the site because of the current infrastructure. We think we may have to intervene in some way, shape or form. It's not necessarily that we have to rebuild the road. It could be as simple as changing the line markings on the road, widening them, narrowing the road up with line markings, those sorts of interventions. So there could be a whole range, and they obviously vary in cost from potentially inexpensive to wholesale curb and channel type changes to the road to narrow the road up. But we haven't got quite, I don't have that level of detail with me.
That's okay, but there are indications now that will be requirements to have some infrastructure changes around some of these schools.
Potentially we would have, yeah. But because we haven't implemented the speed limit changes, we don't actually know how effective or ineffective they might be, to what extent those infrastructure changes may look like.
Well, it's helpful to see that logic applied, because it may not be necessary if the speed is lowered, and you'll use data such as accident rates and other things to substantiate any structural changes that might be needed ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, it sort of forms just part of just before I go to you, Councillor Fraser, around the pickup and drop off at the schools as well, because it's almost more risky in some of the schools than people going 40 or 50 Ks. Having more stuff of it firsthand in some of the schools, that's some of the logistical kind of setups. And so as part of this consultation, if you receive feedback from the community, is there avenue to build that into this, or is that a sort of further to Christine's question, a separate process?
I think it will depend on the nature of that feedback and to what extent we can factor that into the plan, or whether that's carried forward as a future piece of work to look into. Yeah.
Councillor Frank?
I was just curious around preschools. And I know we did discuss that last term. So just interested in, obviously we're just looking at the schools, but we can do with that.
So that's really, we had a very good look at it, to be fair. And one of the challenges, I suppose, we found is that, maybe there's a bit of background, generally with schools, there's probably a wider range of how kids get to those schools. They're walking, cycling, scooting, getting dropped off. Generally with preschools, they're getting dropped off. So you've got a different way that children are actually getting to those locations. The other aspect was when you look at the school zone and your distance around the school zone and the concentration, I suppose, of kids, and then you incorporate preschools, then you start thinking about what about other businesses that you might have a lot of foot traffic as well, and then it starts growing quite a bit, and you get overlaps, and then it becomes neighbourhoods start completely getting dropped down to 30 kilometre an hour speed limits. And so from that point of view, we recommend actually having that discussion around the wider neighbourhoods or the wider conversation more holistically, as opposed to just preschools or including preschools as part of the school discussion, because there's a bit more complexity around it.
And there tend to be a lot less movements, and preschools tend to have smaller numbers than a school, although probably at some of your rural school areas that may not be true, but they do tend to be much smaller numbers and not necessarily all at the same compressed time. So probably the urgency for addressing preschools is probably not as high as the urgency for addressing much higher volume, higher risk, more mobile, more complex, more unpredictable kids and parents rushing around outside of school, which I'm sure you understand.
My kids are predictably unpredictable.
Councillor Wilson?
Thanks, Rob. Cheers, guys. I've got two questions. One's just reflecting on what Christine and Rob were talking about with that kind of infrastructure with a direct example. At the Ardlassa Community Board workshop last week, there was a request around how could we go about getting a pedestrian crossing out in front of the school, across from the school over to the recreation ground across it. Page 42 of the draft speed plan has that school and that road suggested as a 30k permanent. So I guess a direct example of what we're talking about with that infrastructure along with the speed change, if hypothetically the feedback from Waikaia residents around that 30k permanent included yes and include a pedestrian crossing, would that then be what would go back to what the Katahi for this is part of the plan, and therefore that whole project from getting the signage up, the speed limit and also a pedestrian crossing would all come part of a Road to Zero project? Is that the process we're working with?
Through your worship, not part of the bylaw. The actual infrastructure change would be a separate process. Slightly, I suppose, pedestrian crossing themselves is a topic alone, to be fair, because one of the reasons for pedestrian crossings is when you have a high volume of road or a high traffic road and there's insufficient time to allow people to cross. That's one of the factors to consider pedestrian crossings. Don't get me wrong, around the district there's historic ones, and in today's criteria should probably never be there, but because they're historic we've managed to retain them.
I think some of that,
that's a whole, yeah, to be fair, probably
some of that pedestrian crossing concern though, and I guess out in front of schools in particular, it's been addressed that even though there might not be the high volume and it might not have a matrix test of we need a pedestrian crossing there because the amount of vehicles, it's having it there to teach kids how to use a pedestrian crossing so that when they go to a busier town, they know what a zebra line means. So that's I guess the viewpoint from some of the residents around the concerns, and that being more their safety concern than the speed, because it was only brought up after that conversation that, well, actually the speed's being looked at on that same road, and they'll get their opportunity to engage. My other question was on the consultation of it. From a comms point of view, it talks about taking the policy out for consultation and using the different avenues, including through social media. I'm wondering, is what's going to be advertised that it's open for consultation a general, the whole district speed management plan is up for review and consultation, or will it be isolated area by area? This is what's been proposed for your area, here's your chance to have some feedback? Or is it we're doing the whole thing, if you want to engage, read the whole document and submit to us? Or can it be broken down more? Hey, Lumsden, here's a map of what's going to happen outside Lumsden and Northern Southland College. I think that would, my personal view is that would drive more localised engagement, and it's fairly easy to break down and do that through that kind of medium. So, yeah, just wondering if that would be the comms plan, or whether it's purely the same advert being advertised throughout the district of consulting on the whole policy overall.
Yeah, through you, Your Worship. There will, of course, be general advertising of the consultation, but we'll be seeking both general and specific feedback on elements of the speed management plan. Part of that process will involve reaching out to schools in relation to the changes proposed in those areas, and how we can, I guess, facilitate feedback that is targeted to those people in those areas for the changes for the areas as well. So, yeah, those, as you say, the community around a school is very important to getting feedback in relation to those specific school changes. So we would be looking to get that specific feedback as well, to say, have we actually got the balance right? Is there something that, because we are not always on the ground at that school, that we haven't taken into account that you are aware of?
And the same for, I guess, community boards, if it's being advertised on community board and community pages, that it would be broken down to be advertising what's relevant within those areas. Yeah, that sounds like it's...
Understanding as well, of course, there's a lot of people who move through areas who don't live in areas. We have a point of view as well, and we often get that with the higher speed roads. Like the people who generally want them higher speed are the people who aren't living there. They want to get through there fast. Whereas the people who are living there would quite like people to slow down, reduce the deaths, and stop at the store and get a coffee. So you're always going to get a bit of a range of feedback on things from the broader perspective as well. So you mean people in your local community will have interest in some of the other communities as well. So you never quite know.
Opportunity to engage.
I think the engagement and gathering and all the information, I mean, this is the whole point of it, is you go out and go, okay, this is what we're thinking. Tell us, and then it'll all come back to you guys for final decision making. So.
Councillor Greenie?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick question regarding the state highways. So, from the state highway perspective, is the timing of Wakatahi looking at speed limit changes the same as what we would be doing? Have we got consistency? Because I see, I understand that you've included these areas for completeness of the report, but that I guess at the end of the day we don't have much influence over those. I'm just wondering what the time frames are.
So through you, Your Worship, my understanding is for Wakakotahi, they have already consulted around the changes for our schools locally. Yeah. In terms of their wider consultation plans for their full speed management plan, there's upcoming, I think, isn't it? Is it early next year that's proposed for? Yeah. So their timing is not perfectly aligned to our own.
But it's not.
It's not far off it.
And we would, I guess, be looking at doing things incrementally anyway when this actually goes through anyway.
Correct. We're not going to be able to
Can't do it all at once.
put the signs up at every school at exactly the same day. So there's a bit of logistical aspects. We might install them all, but not turn them all on at the same time. Those sorts of aspects. So it's around, I suppose, Part of the changes to the whole speed management is trying to get better consistency across regions and nationally as well, so that the likes of ourselves can actually see what the state highways and vice versa, particularly in future years, try and get better consistency and timing. So that is part of the intent. It may not be 100% as pointed out, but at least we're not maybe waiting 5 or 6 years away from seeing what their plans are.
Councillor Duffy?
It's a bit of a detail, but I just wonder, and for the purpose of the report, I see the Hillside Primary School. I'm just wondering if you should put Browns in brackets. People outside that community might not recognise.
Councillor O'Brien.
Just following on from Councillor Graney, through you, Worship, and through Rob's comments earlier around, and what you've just suggested around consistency being key. Using the example of, say, you're driving and then you're doing 80 k's, but then you have to drop to 60 and then go up again. If we have a change of government, an impending government is talking about changing some rules around speeding nationwide. Do we have, based on this report, based on our discussions, based on the changes that we make, do we have discussion around, say, in 6 months' time, if there is fundamental changes, how do we maintain those consistencies with central government? Do we have sort of a plan in place for that, or do we need to be having that discussion?
I suppose central government questions always without actually knowing what they're proposing. But I suppose part of it is often, I'll pick on this because we're talking about schools. Schools is a good example. It is, I say, to a certain extent locally driven, a reduction in speed around schools. And so I don't think there'd be a significant, could be wrong, I don't know, but a change from that. It's probably more the longer term view and vision around the wider network, our gravel road network in general, or field road network in general, what the future of that may look like. One of the aspects of the plan is we're required to review it at least every 3 years. So it will, a bit like our long-term plan, every 3 years have a look at it and see, well, what's the plan for the next 3 years in particular, what changes, are there any changes, what should we consult on or have discussions with our communities on. So that potentially may not change.
So regardless of who's in government, there's not going to be so much of a left field swing from Southland's perspective in terms of our, as you say, our schools. That'll probably stay the same. It's probably more the open highways. We're not going to run.
It's sort of for me to say what politicians may. I think I have heard what some of them have said around changes to speeds where safety is okay, where it's okay to do so safely is the sort of language being used, which is not wildly different from the language being used in this space. I think looking at the tranche of work that's going through in this initial phase, central government can do whatever they like, so heaven knows, but it seems unlikely. These seem the sort of things that are unlikely to be affected by that sort of thinking. It may be the next tranche where that may have changed, that environment may have changed, and we may be under some different directives, so that would come back for a different discussion, I think.
So based on a second tranche scenario in terms of the co-funding model, we'd have to be pretty aware of that as well, because the appetite for what Kotahi in terms of co-funding could be quite different between now and in 3 years' time.
You may well think so, but not for us to say. Isn't that what they?
You got a crystal ball, Councillor?
Maybe.
Thank you.
Well, it looks like everyone's had a good go. There are no further questions for the team. Councillor Wilson, maybe?
I'm just, I'm new to this, so I'm trying to figure out whether this is a process, but just listening to what John was talking about of adapting the current plan in there, knowing what it's going to come back after consultation for Rakiura, is there the opportunity to literally table this for a couple of hours to hear what John's thoughts are, amend that, come back, and then we approve that draft to go up to consultation? I'm just trying to understand how easy would it be to communicate the minor adjustment and then have that adjusted we approve that in a few hours?
Through you, Your Worship, the speed management plan has been prepared with the assistance of external consultants. So if we needed to change maps within the plan, we would need to go back to the external consultants to get those maps changed. How quickly they can do that, I couldn't tell you.
Surprises me, but
Now, I suspect that the safe course of action is to go with our recommendations as we've got them to keep things moving, but that doesn't preclude in the future when it comes back or during the process, Councillor Wilson,
call me Matt.
having his input then.
Absolutely.
Fiona? Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think, yeah, our advice is leave it the way it is for now, but it doesn't preclude what you're suggesting being put into the process and influencing the outcome.
Very good question,
Just trying to speed things up.
Yeah.
Might slow them down.
He's mentioning Half Moon Bay. Just on that map of Half Moon Bay, you've got a pedestrian walkway as being a 30 kilometre per hour road. And that's Argyle Street going up to
Is that the end part of
the
Argyle
top
Street?
little piece of it, yeah, which is a pedestrian way.
Right.
On the map here, we've had trouble in the past with locals wanting to drive up and down it. I'd hate to see it declared a 30 kilometre per hour street.
So through my comment, in some cases, particularly in the past, we've done, from a mapping point of view, you include the area, so if there's development within that area, it's still covered. If you go down to a specific road, very specific in terms of where you stop, if that road was ever developed or if a subdivision occurred outside of that area, the actual roads, then it wouldn't be covered. So it's a bit of a pragmatic approach to trying to include. Tiana's probably a good example. We've had some of the Fiordland estates being developed. If we had only followed the road, technically, and didn't use a broader outline, those subdivisions wouldn't be included as part of the speed limits. So there is a bit of a balance there between including areas, whether there's technically roads in that area or not, to cover off that is still the speed limit that would apply to any road in that area. So there's a bit of that element as well. But I take the point that if we're showing these roads, even though it may be legal but unformed, people may think they can drive up there.
Thanks for that, Hartley, and very good discussion on that. I think we're probably in a position to go to the motion on page 68. So we're endorsing and releasing the draft speed management plan set out in attachment A for consultation in accordance with section 82 of the Local Government Act from 8 a.m. Thursday the 12th of October to 5 p.m. Friday the 10th of November. I assume that staff think that's a long enough period to get enough feedback. So if there's no further questions or discussion, I'll put the motion. Sorry, I'll back the track up and go. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Graney. And seconder, Councillor Menzies. Then I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Anyone against? That is carried. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move backwards now to 7.4. Which is the new report that we've got, which is the Mayor's report. And I just want to start this report off with an acknowledgement of thank you to the staff that helped out with the flooding and the contractors as well. We had as you all know, pretty significant flooding event a couple of weeks ago, and we had a lot of staff go and man the station at EMS. We had an internally set up IMT team here that some of them actually worked round the clock on for the duration of the flood, and a number of contractors out and about, engineers supporting those contractors. So a lot of work done on the ground to keep this moving. So I just wanted to formally acknowledge and recognise the great work that was done and the work that's continuing to be done with the clean-up. Seen a few roads around the district that got a bit beaten up, and the BAU gets interrupted in this case, and so that the staff and contractors are working on there. So if you wouldn't mind recording that in a minute. And yeah, so this report, like I said, is a new report. I actually talked to a lot of the items on it at our last council meeting, so I'll take it as read from my part and invite any questions. But we do have some board chairs here. So yeah, and this is a new part, like I say, of the report, of having a feedback loop between council and community boards. Normally we have a council report on the community board agenda, but it doesn't necessarily come back the other way. So this is an opportunity for the boards to be able to come and talk to council. So we're doing about three boards at a time, and we've got Tim and Greg Tyler and Diane Holmes from Fiordland there, and I think we've got Matt filling in for Richard. So if there's no questions from me, I will move on to the board chair reports. And yeah, if Greg, if you want to start up, you're welcome to come to the table. And, yeah, you might as well start there as well. Welcome along. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, guys. We're first cab off the rank for the new report, so there's no high expectations on our behalf. So,
and you didn't get much time too. Sorry. So
I've got a brief. Now I've realised I've left my glasses in the car, so I'll see if I can read my bold writing. Yeah, so I assume it's just an update on what we've recently been getting into. So I'm Greg Tyler, Chair of the Northern Community Board, which covers Mossburn, Lumsden, Athol and Garston basically. And so some of the projects we've recently uptaken or signed off on. One of the major ones was we heard Rob talking about the recent flood. So the Mossburn stormwater drainage upgrade has been very successful. So that there was a lot of flooding on the main road every time there was a decent downpour there, and by the Northern Southland Yard, which was very dangerous for tourists. Essentially, the locals could negotiate their way through the flooding, but it was on the main road, and yeah, so we had that recent flood event, and it's been 100% successful. There was no flooding there whatsoever. I know Councillor O'Brien highlighted in one of his reports one time about the surface flooding in Mossburn. So that's a big tick in the box for that upgrade. Unfortunately, all my reports not a tick in the box, but so recently we've done a spatial planning workshop for Athol and Garston, and this is one of the things both towns have to do is replace the other toilets, and Council's taken the opportunity to get the spatial planner in to have a look at the whole setup. There's some parking issues, there's some, or probably one of the biggest things that come out of that workshop was the speed of traffic going through those towns, Garston especially, because there's quite a bit of activity going on just as you come into the township, and so the planner did take that on board. So it's 80 k's going through Garston, which seems ridiculous, high speed, how you enter the township and then all of a sudden hit Coffee Bomb and the honey shop and potentially the hotel will reopen. So that's been, that speed limit was really highlighted. So I think when that plan comes through, we'll find that there will be a request for a reduction in speed through those two towns. The rec ground in Lumsden has been, we've had a bit of a get together and a talk about how to preserve and nurture the current rec grounds, which is the old rugby club, currently leased and operated by the Pony Club. There is a disc golf option to go in there. and we've just had a bit of a get-together with some locals to see how we can tidy the old clubhouse up and keep it fit for purpose, and any other opportunities that may arise if that's done. I had a recent meeting with Environment Southland regarding the flood banks, and this was Environment Southland have got a very successful plan, I think, with the latest floods. They're reviewing the potential areas where there could be potential, soft, breakage, or and there's one area just in behind the rec grounds in Lumsden where vehicles are travelling over it, and they want to cease that, regrass it, take some trees out that are getting close to the flood bank that are potentially hindering or making it a weak spot for the protection of Lumsden. So unfortunately, it looks like it might come back on the ratepayer, that cost of maintaining the grass once it's resown. Put some barriers up to keep the vehicles off it. A lot of it's north of there is the cycle trail, which is fine, but they've done a study, and the integrity of the bank is held better together with grass rather than gravel, and so they want to regrass that area and then have our mowing contractors look after it. There was a review recently on the long-term plan, and the board's been very, I suppose, conscious of the rate rises, and we've suggested to squeeze out a couple of projects that we had in our long-term plan just to try and keep costs down for the future. Some outstanding jobs that haven't been actioned, that have been signed off by the board, and there's probably an embarrassing one here for the councils. There was new lights to be placed in Lumsden, Ethel, Garston and Mosburn, new street lights, and that was signed off about 3 years ago, and that has not been completed. So there has been excuses along the way, but yeah, I think if we're going to sign off on a job, I'd like to see a bit more timely manner than waiting 3 years. Also, we've got a garden plan in Lumsden that's on a 3-year plan. The first year's been implemented, and the idea for 3 years was that it would be implemented as the money come in from the ratepayers to cover the cost of implementing that plan. So that's still ongoing, and I'm waiting to hear back from Mark actually on where we're sitting right now, because we've only done the first year. We're into the second year, so waiting for an update on that. Which just brings us to the Lumsden Playground. We've designed a destination playground for Lumsden, and this may be part of my not understanding the system or how it worked, but we did believe we had a $300,000 budget. Somebody asked me, what made you think that, Greg? Well, I thought about that, and we had 2 staff members from the council come out to one of our workshops with the plans for us to go through to design a $300,000 playground, because that was the budget. So that's how I got to understanding we had $300,000 earmarked for our playground. I know it come in 3 different parcels, but one parcel hadn't been approved apparently, so we're down to 200,000. but this is going to come across the council table very shortly. So I'm probably going to ask now that I hope we get councillors' support for that extra $100,000 funding, which is going to come across the table in the very near future, I think, Rob. And if you want me to come back and plead, then I'll come back and plead. But we're hoping that that destination playground isn't going to get cut in half and have half of the facility that we thought we were going to have. Yeah, so is there any questions for me? Or?
Yeah, thanks, I agree. Has anyone got any questions?
Thanks very much for coming along, Greg, and representing the Northern Community Board. Probably just a couple of comments from me around the spatial planning side of things. As you know, we consulted someone to come and have a look at that. I'll just use the Garston as an example. There was sentiment from the community that some work needed to be done there, as you've highlighted, around speed, the way vehicles park, rubbish, toilets. There's quite a lot of pressure there. I just want to just reiterate and just, I guess, the messaging from me is that we need to be really clear about our community leaders and our communities being objective and impartial and not currying favour for any particular businesses within the areas who may have an influence over some of these decisions. And I'm seeing that creep through a little bit. And what I'm seeing is a conflict of ideology between some members of the community over others. And to me, that's a bit of a concern, and it's something that I would like some members of our boards, as well as our community at large, to be very aware of. That's probably it from me as an observation just within that particular space.
I think when the plan comes out, we'll be better placed to make some decisions on that, won't we?
Yes, we will. However, I am aware that the word on the street is that some decisions have been made around certain things, which came as a surprise to me. And I'd like the process to be a little bit more, I guess, from a communication perspective. It needs to be a little bit clearer in certain areas. That's just the messaging I've got. Thank you.
Councillor Greenie?
Thank you, Your Worship. Thanks for your report, Greg. Just a quick question from me. With your playground, that extra funding, how are you looking to fund it? Is that from reserves or by way of
the open spaces?
Open spaces.
Oh, it comes
So
under.
as part of that report being tabled, whatever it was, end of August.
Yeah.
So yeah, that will come back up.
To be honest, our community leader, we were already on the open spaces funding as well.
Mm.
So we were kind of all just sort of sideswiped a wee bit with understanding that no, it actually hasn't gone through the system properly. So yeah.
Thanks, Greg. One of the questions I've got, it's because it relates to Richard's report on Ardnasa as well, a shared thing that both boards are dealing with. Is there any update on the green waste discussions up in the Northern Board around Mossburn and Athol?
When we're doing the spatial planning, the green waste at Athol especially come up because there is a potential subdivision of 20 sections right next door to the green waste where it currently is. So they're kind of thinking that maybe we need to be looking at another site for the green waste there. And the only other feedback I've got on, well, the Mossburn site's ideal. It's hidden, it's got a big hole in the ground that can be filled up for probably 20 years. But I don't know if there's been much movement on getting it consented.
Just waiting to find out.
Sort of status quo as we go at the moment, yeah.
Cool. There's no further questions. Thank you very much. We appreciate you coming in and sharing that with us.
Thank you.
Go over to Diane.
I'm off? All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, particularly Mayor Rob, for giving the opportunity for me to share some information about the Fiordland Community Board. Firstly, we're a very new board. 5 new board members were elected in 2022, plus myself as a brand new board chair. Our voice of experience in the room is Councillor Sarah Graney, who we work very closely with. Despite having such a group of newbies, I want to just say that we're very fortunate in Fiordland to have what I would use, the adjectives I would use to describe them, is proactive, representative, cohesive, respectful and collaborative. So it's a really good board. Early in our triennium, we decided that there were a few key priorities for us, and seeking more opportunities for us to hear from our community was at the top of our list. So as a team, we extended our drop-in sessions that we'd held in Manapōuri over the previous triennium. The previous board had held them in Manapōuri as that community had no representative living in their town, so this was a way to engage them. The information that we gathered by having regular times talking with locals was invaluable in setting priorities for that town. And we progressed new toilets, upgraded the View Street car park and Pearl Harbour car park, got new play equipment for the village green, replaced a boat ramp, and we talked about trees an awful lot. So Manapōuri did really well because when talks came to council about what was needed for long-term planning, for annual planning, for anything, we could go, oh, we know what Manapōuri wants. So the new board decided to extend the Manapōuri model to Te Anau and Mararoa. You know where I mean, the key. We have drop-ins a couple of weeks before each board meeting. 2 or 3 board members generally attend and everyone has turns. We have around about 3 to 8 individuals or groups attend through each drop-in. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be the right solution for communicating with our rural communities, as the Mararoa drop-ins have so far yielded 0 attendees. So we need to look at a separate solution for what might work better out there. Our first Te Anau drop-in was in February 2023, this year. So some of the ideas and issues brought to us in the drop-ins, we've already seen success and progress with. For example, a picnic table request for a reserve near the retirement village so that some of the elderly living there can have a wee sit down to catch their breath before heading back. So that was a nice easy one that we could tick off, and it would never have come to us if we hadn't had a drop-in for them to wander into. Request for a change of street address system at the retirement village, which was already in with council but had gotten a bit stuck. We got involved and managed to get it unstuck, and were able to intervene to get the ball rolling again with council staff, and that's now reached its conclusion and it has its new address, and the residents of the retirement village are very happy. A clean-up of wilding pines on the Te Anau Manapōuri Highway will be starting soon with the assistance from Forest and Bird. And the manager of Community House and their key social worker came along to the last drop-in to seek community board support for improving the growing housing shortage that we're experiencing in Te Anau. As a result, we've had a board-focused workshop on the issue, and following that an inter-agency meeting with MSD, Kāinga Ora, MBIE, New Zealand Police, etc., etc. And we're going to look to be coming up with our own strategy and requesting council support to support recommendations coming from our strategy in the near future. So these are just a handful of the examples of the many and varied requests and discussions that we have at the drop-ins. Our next step in improving board communications will be to write a post-drop-in board meeting newsletter that will keep the wider locals informed of what we're doing. The new board has also decided that it was time to champion the removal of the fee from the Te Anau pay toilets, which is a district asset, and I understand it will be discussed at your council meeting on the 25th of this month, so I'm not going to bore you with any detail on that now, but I'll warn you that myself and a couple of the other board members will be coming with a whole separate and very passionate dissertation about why that fee is a terrible idea. So there's something to look forward to. Here it is. There's the dissertation now. But I won't do it. So I'll bet none of you will want to miss that meeting now. You'll all be there on the 25th. So yet another priority that the board determined early on was that we need to do something for the Te Anau Manapori Airport to change the poor record of performance of what has the potential to be a wonderful, vibrant and useful asset to our region. We determined that our duty as the governance body for the airport was to seek to find ways to make the facility more successful and less of an increasing burden on ratepayers. Councillor Graney has led the piece for us and brought our request to council. On behalf of the Fiordland Community Board, I want to express our gratitude to this council for supporting the review. It is awesome to have participated alongside Sarah and heard our community's passion for our airport, together with their frustrations, in what has been a very robust and extremely thorough consultation. The flood of ideas and practical solutions has been overwhelming, and through listening to our people and the experts that we've been guided to, the Review Advisory Panel has come to the recommendations that Councillor Graney will present at a future meeting. I'm not going to steal your thunder, don't panic. These recommendations are fully supported by the Fiordland Community Board, and we are very excited about them and confident that they will make a positive difference that we've been seeking. The Te Anau Basin Development Plan is underway and ongoing, with a very broad scope to look into the future and determine what we need to help our communities meet the key pillars they've identified in the community's future plan back in 2020. We're looking at beautification and upgrade of our existing town centre and lakefront reserves, determining where town growth might go into the future, looking at all of our open spaces, including establishing whether we've got enough playgrounds or whether the existing ones are in the right place, looking at road design, layout and connectivity with cycling and walking, all the while viewing these objectives through a lens of sustainable living, economic growth, and not changing the character of who we are too much. So we haven't put much on the consultants at all, just a little bit ambitious. There's been a lot of consultation on this piece that's been generally well attended or well responded to, and the consultation and communications are ongoing. The final report's due out in early December, so stay tuned for that piece. Running alongside our development planning is, of course, the not fully known recommendations of the Milford Opportunities Project, who are still in feasibility testing mode of their key pillars. So we have to do a lot of educated guessing as to what they may mean for the future of the basin. I believe if we see the results starting to happen from all of the priorities set by the board, along with the MOP objectives, it will only be positive for Te Anau and the wider region. But with proposed change, there is always some feeling of anxiety, and it's fair to say that some of our residents are feeling a bit apprehensive. So we need to lead with as much knowledge as we can gather, stay calm and positive ourselves, and provide clear communication and be as open as possible in order to bring our community through this and start seeing some of the positive results. Other than that, it's been business as usual with long-term planning, and you'll be pleased to know we're doing our bit to try and reduce the rates as much as possible in our group and our board, doing our community grants work and working through various council-led reports and board meetings. So that's me. Thank you very much once again for the opportunity to keep you up to date with the happenings in Fiordland, and just wondered if anyone had any questions.
Thank you very much, Diane. Very good presentation. Sarah's looking at me like, please will make a comment.
I just want to acknowledge Diane and the community board as well. They were certainly on a steep learning curve when they came in last October. But they're a board that ask lots of questions and seek to understand and seek to. They're never afraid of questioning, and a lot of that is actually as a result of Diane's leadership as well. So we have a good working relationship, and thank you.
Through you, Your Worship, just with regards to the Manapōuri Airport, it doesn't seem that long ago that we were all standing inside that airport, some of us for the first time, and sort of going, wow, what a beautiful asset it is. And it's really heartening to hear that over the 15-year period that we've had it? 20 years. 20. Okay, time flies. So, and some of the, I guess some of the challenges and the liability that's been associated with that, it's really heartening to hear that within the space of less than a year of kind of as a council making a decision around, well, what are we going to do, and then forming a working group and the community board coming together like that. It's really, really heartening and good to hear, and hopefully based on what you've told us with regards to the community consultation that's gone through, the plethora of ideas which help to form the basis of some of your decision making. So that's a credit to both Councillor Graney and yourself and the community board and the community at large. So we're really, really excited to hear about that report and where we're going forward with that.
Excellent. I'm excited that you're excited.
Chomping at the bit.
Cool, that's great. Thank you very much. I'll now hand over to Matt on behalf of Richard Clarkson.
I talked to Richard yesterday, and he was grateful for the opportunity to come and address and supportive of the mayoral report and the opportunity for community board chairs to address council. Unfortunately, with the shorter notice, couldn't make it, but he has sent through some bullet points. So firstly, congratulations to the Waikaia Trails Trust on the completion of the stage 1 and the opening of the pump track and at the Trails Hub in Waikaia last weekend. Then on to some nitty gritty. We seem to have issues with project delivery and the time these projects take to get off the ground and get completed, i.e. the streetlights in Riversdale and Waikaia have been in Invercargill for over 20 months and the tender has only just been sent out to install them. The Riversdale and Waikaia, as well as other northern green waste disposal investigations, have not progressed anywhere. As I understand it, we are going to hear back from SDC at the next meeting in a couple of weeks regarding that topic. The board has been waiting where that's heading. Kruger Street Reserve in Balfour being sold for development of sections is ongoing. It is progressing, but this has been happening for many years. The Riversdale St John rebuild, the level of consent and resource consent process is very long, drawn out process, and it is very complex and seems over the top for what is a storage shed for an ambulance. An ongoing conversation is the gravel build-up and the extraction from rivers. It's a hot topic in our area, especially with the frequent weather events that we've just had. We are aware that these issues are not all FCC issues, but we do need to have clear pathways to try and work through these issues that streamlines the process and allows people and groups to proceed with projects in a timely manner. So sorry, not that positive, but these are our issues. And I'm happy to try and answer as best I can any questions regarding any of that.
Thanks, Matt. And I'll just make a comment to your last statement, and I'll invite the Environment Southland to come and speak at our council meeting about that gravel stuff. Try and get that moving and have that conversation there. But yeah, are there any other questions for Richard through Matt?
Sorry, just in respect to the streetlights, which has come up twice, and it's indicated the process is now out for 10. A time frame around that, so the lights will go on in the future. Have we got an estimated time?
I have written down the issues with the street lights, so I'll follow it up. Perhaps we can get the boards knowing.
I think it was spoken to at the last council meeting.
Well, it's quite a few work streams in the district awaiting the same thing.
Cool. If there's no further questions, I'll thank the three of you very much for especially taking the time to come in and present to us. So I think it's a very valuable part of the meeting and really appreciate it.
Thank you again.
Just before we break for morning tea, there's a list of sort of councillor committees, I guess, for want of a better word at the moment. Is there any councillors who want to provide an update for anything that they've been along to that's on that list? Councillor Ravenclaw, very quick to jump in.
Thank you. Through you, Rob. Thank you. I just wanted to repeat about the regional arts strategy. We had a meeting with the consultant Rebecca about 8 weeks ago with the committee, and it was very valuable. And she's presenting to us our regional arts strategy in November, coming to the council table. The funding applications for Creative have closed at the end of September, so we'll have a meeting. I'm going to catch up with Keith today in the next couple of weeks, and we're going to have it at the Arts Murahiku building on 4th Street. Has anyone been down there? Do they? So we're going to go there and then have a look at some of the walls within the Cargill, the painted walls from South Sea Spray and out to an artist at Otatara. And yeah, that's my update. So, and I've also got the map of the Southland Trail. I'll hand it out later. So it's underway. So get out there and see what's happening artistically and creatively around Southland.
Thanks, Nate.
Thanks, Rob.
Any further, Councillor Graney?
Yes, I've just got a very brief update on the Connected Murahiku project. So I spent most of a week last Monday interviewing. We interviewed 6 people for the project lead role, and we have decided on a recipient. I can't actually tell you who it is at the moment until that's just been formalised through the next meeting. But yes, it was a very, very full day. We interviewed 6 people between 10 and 4. Councillor Duffy?
Yes, thank you. We had the Southland Regional Heritage meeting last Friday, which it's an annual meeting we have to adopt the annual financial reports. So they'll be getting circulated around the 3 councils shortly. It was a very short meeting because there was an apology from one of the ICC delegates, and the other one had to leave half an hour, or actually at least 3/4 of an hour after the meeting started. And without that, we didn't have a quorum. So that was that. But it does highlight the fact that ourselves as well, we haven't got an alternate for that committee.
Councillor Ravenclaw, according to...
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Right.
I'd love to come along.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
And you can come regardless, really. But yeah, good. So ICC did have an alternate, but it didn't get to arrive. So just something. And also this last round of funding, which closed on the 30th September, we discovered that the option to apply to regional heritage for funding had fallen off all of the council websites. So we're working on getting that back on. Yeah. But there are quite a healthy number of applications in this time. So.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick update from around the Mountain Cycle Trail Trust. It's just had its 3rd AGM, so getting underway. But last year its key project was development of the new website, and also just supporting social media process to push out posts. And I encourage anyone who's got time to go and have a look at that new website, and hopefully you'll see the difference from what it has been before, and we're already seeing a marked increase in responses. Thank you.
Cool. Councillor Keys?
Just thank you. I'll just do a quick update. Just last week had the AGM for the district's counselling centre. You're in a good position. There's always a challenge to get staff, but they seem to have a very good staff, stable staff at the moment. But yeah, looking at ways of encouraging people to come through the system to be trained as counsellors, because it's demand is still pretty high. So Yeah, they're going all right.
Thank you.
A few others there, but I'll be on this. James.
Cool, thanks very much. So I'll move from the chair that we received that report. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Graney. All in favour?
Aye.
Anyone against? You're fired. Well, thank you very much. I think it's a good time to break for morning tea now, and hopefully our community board chairs will join us for a cuppa.
Yes. Tēnā koutou, thank you, councillors. Thank you, Ward Chief, for your time today. My report today relates to the electronic plan or e-plan. In order to comply with the national planning standard, today we are thinking approval for a budget expenditure for implementing the e-plan. Before to explain what we're asking today, I'm going to give a overview of what is an electronic plan or e-plan. Electronic plan is a way when user can engage with the district plan in an online way, electronically. So the user can see in a maps and also the provision for the district plan at the same time. At the same time, user can find all the information related to the land that the user are looking for with the policy on it. Another good thing about electronic plan also going to support a plan change process, for example, a submission process. So people can put the submission into the plan or the electronic system. Why we are looking for implement an electronic plan? First, because we have to comply with the national planning standard by April 2024. Second, because we want to improve our customer service. So about the report today, we are seeking approval of $60,000 for 2023-2024 financial year to be funded by the district operation reserve, and also want to know that will be ongoing expenses over the last following 10 years or the operation of the district plan. Okay, that will be included into the long-term plan. So, well, that is the basis of my report, and if you have any question, happy to help.
Thank you, and yeah, thank you for the good report, and just also acknowledging paragraph 19 and they're actually providing that ongoing cost to rates, which I think is very helpful to have in the report, so thank you very much for that. Just an initial question for me around the age of the district plan and the cost of getting that online when, depending on what happens with the future legislation around the RMA, are we potentially, to put it bluntly, flogging a dead horse
Wasting money.
with that amount of money at this stage? And what would be the implications if we didn't do it come April with us non-complying? Are there any implications around that?
Okay, firstly, we are not complying, of course. We are going to have some conversation with the Minister for the Environment. What's going to happen there depends on them. What I can see, probably they are going to put someone in the council to try to put this one, okay?
So maybe, so we did actually discuss what might happen. So we think that, so the national planning standards are very clear that council, Southland District Council is in the, there are several tranches of councils who are with different dates to comply. The dates for Southland District is 30th of April 2024. This planning standard has been around for a while, so we're at the end of the time frame, and I think we've exhausted the willingness of government to kind of wait for us to do this. Lots of other councils already have electronic district plans. It's the way that this particular discipline is going. But to your point, Mr. Mayor, about are we flogging a dead horse? I guess that until we have either a regional plan or an updated district plan, this plan is still the plan that council is going to have to use when it's looking at managing the functions that are required under its district plan. So having an interface that enables the community to and provides better customer service. And I know that it's still 60,000 and an ongoing cost over 10 years, but it may in fact be more cost effective to take this step now.
Thank you. And then, Councillor Menzies?
Just a question around the annual licence fee, which to my inexperienced eyes looks quite high. What do we get for the $30,000? Does that mean they put the information in to update it, or that means that we are then not using staff time to do that? It'd be good to hear a comment.
That is mostly the services, the maintenance of the process, and updating the process as well. So yeah, it's mostly something like that. What we are going to do, like a council, like a staff, is just fit the software. Okay. So what happened here is we are not creating a software because council is not a web developer company. So that is why we have to pay the license of that. So it will be very useful for us. Just send the document, and the people from the software going to update into the online system. So that is the goal.
So there is a saving of staff time doing it this way. Do you have an idea what that would be in vague terms?
I'm sorry, I can't give you that information.
That's fine. It was just a query
about the resource consent team. Currently, we are working with printed map. We have printed map PDF online. So that means we are receiving a good number every day of requests for services, just asking about, can I do this one in this place? I cannot see the map because we don't have maps for the district plan. So on timing is a big number of hours weekly that we are going to save just answering questions. Okay? So the total amount is quite tricky because it's variable, but yes, at least for us, yes. And GIS team as well, because they don't have to change the map or because it's already provided, because the system is connected with S3, that is the new platform that we're using for the map. So what happened, they don't have to change the map, it's just updating the information. That is easier, yeah.
So is this the same software that other councils use up in the country?
A large number of councils are using it.
And there's some assurity that given that we're putting so much money into it, that they'll still be around in years to come, so that kind of has been done.
I'm just thinking like an idea that council had a few years ago to create something in some, but with the cost of this one is less than hiring anyone. So that is the other thing. And why it is less is because it's repetitive between different councils. So yeah.
So there are, I've just done a quick count up, there's about 13 councils in the South Island that are using e-plan solutions, and certainly a number of our neighbouring councils have implemented or are going to be implementing e-plan solutions.
I think it's important for developers that are working across the boundaries to have that kind of consistency.
Correct. Yeah.
Did you have a question, Councillor Wilson?
Observation, I guess. I looked at is Wellington City Council one of those councils that are on the list?
Yes, correct.
I had a little play around last night on their system, and I guess from my look at it, it really utilises that GIS mapping data, which we are already investing in, and is, I guess, the way that future decisions, planning, and that kind of work will be done is based on that very kind of modernised approach. The ability on the system to be able to click on a property on a map and essentially print out a property report of what on the district plan directly relates to that property. So from experience I've had being on council and helping people in the community navigate district plans, it becomes less trying to look at their property, look at the map and go through these chapters of a printed sheet on what applies to you. This technology does give the ability to go, there's my house, what applies to me. And I think I'd say that the advantages into the future with some of the just get on with some planning, this is probably a good step towards it from my short take on it.
And to Councillor Menzies' point, that could also prevent a phone call to staff asking for that information as well, so time saving. Councillor Runcorn.
Rob, thank you for your report. One of my questions is time. The provider that's going to be the e-plan together, have they got enough time to meet the obligation at the end of April?
Yes, we've had some early discussions, simply seeking to understand what the timing would be, and they have indicated that they can meet the time frame, the 30th of April time frame. And once we go into a contractual arrangement, of course we would embed that time frame into the contract as well.
This is just landed now to the resource team that it has to be done by April 24, or have we been looking at doing this for a number of years?
From a number of years, the National Planning Standard put different process for put information online. First, it was just put the district plan in a PDF version mostly and provide some maps. And we did that internally, but when we passed to the second stage a few years ago to create electronic map, we were in problem to comply with all the requirements, like get the district plan in 3 clicks or get information in 2 clicks. So this kind of interface was too much for us, because at the beginning we were looking the idea of to do it at home, doing here, but it was too much for us. Because again, we are not web developers, we just GIS team, policy team, and bring someone with the skill could be quite complicated. We're looking for alternative. We were looking for another alternative to us, company that create under request, something like that, but at the same time was complicated. So then we saw the company that did in Wellington, and they start to provide it and creating the market. So we trying to do it differently at home as possible. Now, for timing reason and also for capacity and capability, we cannot.
So my question is, then, if we were looking at doing this, surely we have budget already in place for it, and this is over and above the budget, this unbudgeted expenditure going forward. Was there nothing in their budgets for it?
It's all unbudgeted expenditure. So I'm sorry, I can't speak to what's gone on before, but to kind of reiterate what Francisco has said, we were clearly looking at whether we could craft a solution internally, and that hasn't proved to be robust. It hasn't been something that we can do. I guess in the meantime, other councils have identified and worked with a variety of companies on other solutions. So in some respects, coming in late, we're benefiting in one sense from coming in late, because a lot of the work has been done with other councils.
Thank you for that. The unbudgeted expenditure word is especially where we're sitting. Yeah, thank you.
Through you, Your Worship, thank you for the report. We're potentially going to be asked by Great South under one of their high priority objectives, which is greater digital connectivity. We're going to be asked for $13,551 to go towards that greater digital connectivity. Have you had a discussion with them around any crossovers or streamlining of funds, or where we can, we don't want to be spending that $30,000 and then be asked for $13,500 and then go, well, we've already spent that money, we could have spent it, with them as well. Is there room for discussion with them around that?
Probably, I'll just interrupt there, that the Great South stuff's probably separate to this, and that's in the PX part of the meeting later on. So I think the digital connectivity doesn't quite relate to this kind of thing, where I think making it digitally accessible rather than that connectivity. So I think it's a separate piece, but I think ties into the data kind of work as well. So,
I don't think we need to say anything more.
Okay.
Councillor.
Thanks. I was just thinking in my head, we have, if we went down the E-plan route with the district plan, we still have the GIS system that's used for like utilities maps and property information. And at that point, are we engaging in two separate companies? Could both of those work streams be delivered by either or of these platforms? Has there been, I guess, whoever runs the utilities maps side of our GIS system, have we, within the council, worked across those departments to see whether a shared platform would work for both of those?
I don't know the answer to that, but I can say that the system here is based on ESRI, which is kind of like becoming the GIS standard across the country. But we can take your question and talk with the GIS team and just check that.
Because potentially, talking unbudgeted expenditure, it may be that within the current GIS work streams, it may be that could be shifted into this as well, rather than essentially having two companies addressing GIS software.
I think it's fair to say that the company that we've been having discussions with focused on district plans, and the expertise is in district plans, not necessarily in the kind of asset work. I think the common denominator is the platform that might be used. So we're happy to talk to the GIS team about whether that platform is a common platform and if there's something that we can do about that.
Yeah. The other thing is that is important here. We asked to different staff for different departments about this one. We asked to communication, and they are happy to support. We asked to GIS team, and they are happy to support. We didn't get nothing about incompatibilities or to software, but happy to take the question and pass to the GIS team. But in this report, in this project, we have plenty support of the GIS team, and they are happy with this one because at the same time going to facilitate their work as well.
So not, I guess, a question would be, we're not double dipping and being charged twice for an ESRI license, for example, would be what I'd want to be comfortable on.
It sounds like one's using part of the other one and integrating with it rather than replicating, if I've understood that right.
Well, we'll also ask that question.
Yep.
I think it's been good discussion, and I think reflecting on the fact that being the last cab off the rank means that a lot of that test and groundwork's been done by other councils for us, which is quite good, and noting that other councils are using this successfully, I think it's quite good to see. And I think if we look at the recommendations on page 242, specifically the approving the unbudgeted expenditure up to $72,000 to be funded from the district operations reserve. So coming in less than that as well, then there's also the ability to, so it's up to 72,000. So is there any further questions, or are we happy to move on to the
Are we, since we are at this level of discussion, do we know who the vendor is already? Do we know the vendor?
As E-plan.
So it is. Sorry, that is subject to contractual negotiations, which is why that information wasn't included in the report. So if you would like to have a discussion about that, I'd recommend that we went into public excluded.
Okay.
Because council needs to actually negotiate the contract.
I'm happy to email you.
Thank you. Yeah, I can pass that on to Chief Executive. Cool. So are we in a position to move those recommendations? Councillor Duffy, do I have a seconder? Councillor Fraser, all in favour, please say aye. Aye. That is carried. Thank you very much. Good discussion once again. And we're on to 7.9, where I believe we've got the same people at the table. This is the submission to the proposed Gore district plan. So, yeah, we're continuing the theme of district plans.
Thank you again for your time. For your worship, this report relates to the submission to the proposed district plan. Essentially, we are thinking to approval to delegate authority to the mayor and chief executive to finalize and submit the submission, the proposed district plan. And I'm going to take the report as read, so happy to help if you have any questions.
Just with regards to the timing of it, is there the ability to bring a draft submission through to full council, or is the timing component that needs just the delegation between?
It's the timing that's the issue, because the submissions close, is it late October?
Yes.
And so for the team to do the work and get the report prepared in time, it's just not going to be possible, which is why we're seeking the delegation, please.
I agree with the importance of actually submitting on that, given the boundary I've already talked about today in a couple of places. So, are there any other questions from the floor? There being none, I'll move to the motion, the recommendation. Oh, sorry. I've got bad peripheral vision here.
Thank you. I'm just wondering how that submission might be circulated to us for being able to look at that.
We can.
Hang on, I think maybe the.
Did you want to?
Look, council will recall that when we made a submission to, it was an MB building thing, and it got circulated by email to all councillors with a sort of a short time frame, and we probably anticipated that the chief executive and the mayor would do that.
Yeah, we'll facilitate that and make sure that everyone gets
There's an opportunity, but it might be a short turnaround.
Yeah.
No.
No, we don't. Cool. So, is there someone, would you be happy to move that, Councillor Menzies? Second that.
Am I doing my frowny face again?
You are.
I was just looking at the calendar. I was just trying to, with Ardlassa Community Board being a neighbouring community board to Gore, and quite a shared economy between the town and that community. I'm just wondering how we can go about sharing the information through the next board meeting, and whether they'd want the opportunity to also make a submission with some help on that. I was just checking the calendar to see whether it would fit in a time frame.
Does it fit?
I'm happy to talk to the board chair regarding it, but I was essentially going to make a motion to include this report in their community board agenda.
Could probably be circulated to the board.
So the next meeting's the 18th of October, which is a week before submissions close. So if I can,
I recommend just circulating this to the board members and do it via an email and the same for what I talked about as well, where we've got the very good point.
Yeah.
So who's doing that? I mean, I'm happy to do it
You're
myself.
happy to do it,
Yeah.
When you say who's doing that, who's going to circulate the
Who's going to share the report and contact the community board with essentially a...
We'll work that out, and just to the two old councillors will include the two community boards at the same time. Is that okay?
That's great.
So you can tell them that's what will happen.
Councillor Ruttencourt?
The Reti Community Board is the Gore District too, so we should be doing the same thing with their community board.
Good call.
Yeah.
Cool. So were you in a position to second that, Councillor Wilson?
Yep.
We don't need to add that onto the motion at all.
No.
So all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone against? That's carried.
Thank you.
Right. So we're now at 7.10, bring the book bus replacement report back to the table. Left on the table a couple of weeks ago. And
Thank you, Mr Mayor and councillors. As with the request of council, we went away and did some research into the Iveco van. We spoke to council that had looked at it, plus the outfitters, plus the importer of the van. The information we provided is in the paper. firstly, are there any questions regarding the content?
Any questions? So the Iveco to me looks like it's longer but narrower. They have some adaptations around it.
With a lower roof line too. So I think the price difference could have probably been more with a larger fleet discount, but because we have got a history of buying, that wasn't available. But in general, the conclusion is as per the paper. There has been a change in substance.
So in consultation with Anne around the funding of this, she is now recommending that the funding come from the Vehicle Reserve Fund, which we already have in existence, rather than having to take a loan. This is, as I understand it, Leslie will throw something at me if I'm wrong, it's a fund that we have set aside to replace vehicles as they come. There's enough balance in there at the moment to meet this without, because it fluctuates depending on what's happening with the vehicles. So the recommendation is to use that rather than to take the original line of attack.
So they're effectively funded by depreciation. You can nod from the back there. So.
Get the smart money people to tell that answer that.
Is taken on all equipment vehicles, and then we know the place we don't always need to utilise funding that has been captured for that particular vehicle that's been replaced, depending on sale price and purchase price at the time. And so there's been a bit of a reserve build up that we can utilise to fund this new book bus.
Thanks. Councillor Greene.
So does that mean that recommendation D is different then?
Yes, it's now.
Yes, it's a new D, which should be up.
Got you.
So approves the purchase of a Mercedes Sprinter plus fit out and Starlink at an estimated cost of $183,890, excluding GST, to be funded from the council vehicle reserve. So I guess the only other council member.
Sorry, thank you, Worship. Before understanding that, I did have a question whether we needed the STC branded wrap around that compared to the logo, which is a $8,000 difference.
Yes, that was from Creative Signs. I believe that a logo is a very simple single strip, whereas a branded wrap covers the whole vehicle, and it's scale orders of magnitude larger piece of work.
So the question is that worth putting that extra funding in, as opposed to it's not going to affect the performance of the vehicle?
No, not at all. I'd be guided by council.
Probably 5 to 7 years would be the life cycle of the wrap.
It lasts as long as the vehicle.
Through you, Your Worship, the wrap that's on it has the wrap that was put on. The wrap that's on the present vehicle is the original wrap that was put on it when we first got it. The previous vehicle, when we had the bus, we had it for, I think it was about 10 or 11 years, and again, it was the same wrap that was put on it.
Through Your Worship, and just based on that, based on previous experience of having vehicles like the Mercedes vans or the size and type of vans that you're talking about, it really does pay to shop around when it comes to signage, especially entire wraps of vehicles, because the price difference is phenomenal between providers,
sure.
Whether it be locally or further afield. So it's just something to bear in mind. You can be looking at an $8,000 to $10,000 price difference.
Well,
just to bear in mind.
We'll get further quotes, Councillor.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm thinking that the wrap is it's been obviously the buses have been wrapped for quite some time, and continuing with that brings a little bit of joy and art into the community as we go through. It's very distinctive logo, whilst it's not cheaper and it's in the East Times, but it's we question whether we need to not wrap it for the colour and interest that it brings.
Just a final question for me, in the weeds a little bit, but the Starlink, that $5,000, I imagine there's ongoing subscription costs, or is that $5,000?
No, $5,000 for the install. It may actually be less than that. It changes depending on which Starlink site you're looking at. But the ongoing running cost is between $120 and $250 a month, which we can wrap into our library budget, and it'll deliver more value than we're paying for.
No further questions from the floor. We'll move to the recommendations with the new D on page 251. Is someone in a position to move? Councillor Runclaw, seconded by Councillor Menzies. There's no further discussion. Councillor, all in favour, please say aye. Aye. Anyone against? That is carried. Thank you.
I hope my team had turned up for the next one.
Right, so we're now on to 7.11, the Māori representation option. So that's on page 263 of your agenda, and we've got Miguel and Michael still here to present this one, so welcome.
Good morning, Your Worship and Councillors. This report is providing Council with information on the option to establish a Māori ward for the district and to obtain a decision from Council on Māori wards. The Local Electoral Act provides local authorities with the option to establish Māori wards. Under the Act, a decision to establish a Māori ward needs to be made before 23 November in order for it to be in place for the next elections. Māori wards are an option to enable fair and effective representation of individuals and communities in the district, and this decision leads into the representation review. Māori wards are also a way to increase Māori participation in decision making. Staff have engaged directly with Te Ara Marama on Māori wards, and they discussed Māori wards at a joint Runanga meeting. Following this, staff are advised that the Runanga do not wish to establish Māori wards at this time. Staff are keen to respect the preferences of the Runanga, and this is reflected in the recommendation proposed by staff. The recommendations are set out on page 263 and propose that Council notes that it is able to establish a Māori ward and that it's resolved to take no action to do so at this time.
Cool, thanks, McCann. I think it's good that we've done the pre-work prior to this report coming through, and we've got the advice there. Do we have any questions from the floor or comments?
Your Worship, thanks for the report. Have Māori been, or have they been afforded the opportunity to come and represent on their own behalf at the council meeting? So were they prepared to send a representative from the respective organisations, aside from our own staff or councillors?
Support this report?
Yes.
I'm not sure that question was specifically asked of them. There's information provided to them and then discussions that they had with the Runanga.
I think it's reflective of that. I think the strong relationship that we already have with the links that are already there and have been there for quite some time, and I think it's a recognised, successful kind of system. I think reviewing it regularly is positive, and I think the feedback that we've been provided, that they're happy with the status quo, and the fact that we're working on it, I think, kind of, yeah, I think that sort of meets the. Okay.
Thank you, Worship. I recently attended a Turupu Taua meeting, and where local councils were represented, and the comment around the Māori wards was not at this stage, so it's not saying not in the future. So it's not that they dislike the idea, it's that it's another comment that other systems are working for them at the moment, and it might be there's another vehicle for that representation to occur in the future. So it's just taking time to consider that, and we'll be able to look at that next time round.
Oh, I certainly have attended in the past and made that same comment. So they probably feel as though nothing's changed. So the resources are probably well used elsewhere.
And I think it is an area that we are continuing to work on and make improvements on, especially around the community boards and the like too. So I think given that commitment and equally from them, I think it's a system that's currently working quite well. So if there's no further questions, we'll move to the recommendations on page 263 that we received the report, and note that we're able to establish a Maori ward as part of the representation arrangements for the next, for the Southland District for the next two local government, for the next local government elections, not next two, and resolves to take no action to establish a Maori ward at this time. Councillor Rutherford, and second that, Councillor Baker, aye. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. All those against? One is carried. Right. Yeah, so we have public excluded next. We've got a resolution there to exclude the public for the reasons noted on page 271 of your agenda.
On the big screen.
On the big screen behind.